Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to another World of Tanks review. We are keeping with apparently the theme of the last couple of weeks. We've had a lot of light tanks, and let's not break it now. We're having a look at the Chinese Tier 8 light tank. This is the WZ-132. Historically, this is actually a kind of interesting machine. As far as tanks in the game go, really this shouldn't be in it. Essentially, during the 1960s and 1970s, there was a period where relations between the Chinese and the Soviet governments weren't their best. And as a result, the Chinese decided to make machines that would compete with Soviet designs. And so you had tanks like the Type 59, for example, and here we go, the WZ-132. The design was put forward that this would be able to compete with some Soviet design machines, as I said, but the issue with this tank was that the Chinese kept changing the design of it. So they weren't confident that in its original guise it would be able to be produced in large numbers with the Chinese industrial capacity at the time, and so the design of this machine continually got changed until the point where it just got cancelled. It didn't enter production. What's really interesting about this tank is that it was designed to mount a 100mm smoothbore gun. That's interesting because Wargaming have said on several occasions that where they draw the line with regard to tanks that will be introduced into the game, they draw the line at smoothbore weapons. So if a tank had a smoothbore gun, it isn't going to be in the game, and here we have a tank that was designed to mount a smoothbore gun, but is in the game. Now actually, if you look at it, the gun they've given this in the game is not a smoothbore weapon, but you can see what I'm getting at. Anyway, what do we have in game? Well, once again, bear in mind that this is one of those light tanks that got changed with patch 9.18, of course. But unlike a lot of the other former Tier 9 light tanks, which is what this had been, all the others lost their light tank matchmaking and got balanced to Tier 9. This one stayed at Tier 8. Or I should say, these were not formally Tier 9 light tanks, sorry, but they were match-made as if they were Tier 9 under the old matchmaking rules. So this tank was actually kept at Tier 8, received the improved matchmaker, shall we say, for it, so no longer seeing Tier 9 games at best, and Wargaming balanced the stats to fit with that. Which is interesting, but we'll come on to that a bit later on. Let's have a quick look at the grind that you are going to be faced with. So this is on the Chinese light tank line. Now the Chinese tech tree is a bit odd in as much as lots of it is copied and pasted from other tech trees. I mean, people talk about the entire tank destroyer line being fake, and even on the non-tank destroyer line right up until Tier 5 you only have one tech line, and these are all machines that the Chinese acquired from other countries and modified. In some cases modified, in some cases not so much, to their own purposes. The NC-31 is a Renault FT. The Vickers AE Type B is a British machine that the Vickers company sold internationally but didn't really sell domestically. The Chiha is a Japanese tank. Stuart is American. The T-34 is Soviet. But with the light tanks, you get up to Tier 6 with the 5916, and this is the first time when you actually have some indigenous, or some proper, if you will, Chinese light tanks, rather than just copy-pasted from somewhere else. So we've got 5916 at Tier 6, the WZ-131 at Tier 7, and the WZ-132 at Tier 8. And when you get to this machine, in terms of modules that you might already have unlocked, well, the top engine, unfortunately, this is the first time you will come across it. You'll already have the stock engine, of course, but the top engine is a fairly significant horsepower upgrade, going from 550 to 700. The top radio you can have from the 5916, so you won't have to unlock that. Not that that's that exciting, if we're going to be honest. In terms of guns, you have the stock 85mm gun, which hangs over from the WZ-131. You then get a pretty terrible 100mm gun that is unique to the WZ-132. That unfortunately you do have to grind through. That's a bit of a shame because this is a trash gun, and even when you've got it unlocked you'll probably still be using the stock gun. then the turret, and then the top 100mm gun. So this is not actually a particularly short grind. It does take a little bit of effort, and you won't have modules already unlocked from other tanks as a general rule of thumb, with the exception of the radio, and no one's really going to get too excited about a radio, are they? You can of course go two ways from the WZ-132. You can go up to the Chinese tier 10 light tank, the WZ-132-1, or you can go up to the tier 10 Chinese medium tank, the 121. And this is interesting in and of itself because, well, if you decide to branch into the medium tanks from this machine, you can skip out the T-34-2, which is a hopeless, useless piece of garbage. So there is that, which is nice. Actually focusing back on the tank itself, then what is it that we're faced with? Well, by the time you get up to tier 8, you've probably worked out that Chinese light tanks have a habit of being a kind of light-medium hybrid. You get, for their tier, generally speaking, a fairly punchy gun, and good camouflage ratings, but in exchange for mobility that feels decidedly like a medium tank rather than a light tank per se. It kind of lies somewhere in between. We're going to talk about the guns, or the gun in a bit, in a moment. For now, all I'm going to say is that you have 5 degrees of gun depression, which is not particularly impressive. Having said that, it's not completely awful. And that 5 degrees is all round the tank. Front, back, and sides. Survivability, 1100 hit points for a tier 8 light tank. That's kind of there or thereabouts. Do I have any other tier 8 light tanks to compare that with, actually? Yes, I do. So for the sake of comparison, WZ-132 has 1100, the Black Dog has 1100, the Batchat has 1000, that doesn't get an upgraded turret. The Walker Bulldog has 950, but please bear in mind that this is with the stock turret rather than with the fully upgraded turret, and the HWK-12, 1000, once again, that is with the stock turret. So 1100 hit points is fine. Armour, we will very briefly have a look at the armour. We're not going to spend too long on it. It is thicker than some other light tanks, but it's still not enough that you can expect to bounce anything. Worth noting with this, while we're talking about survivability, your ammo rack is located within the hull underneath the turret, which is a pretty common location for ammo racks to be. And it's a Chinese tank. You obviously have your engine at the back here. Shots here can knock out your engine and set you on fire. And also fuel tanks too, as you look at it from the front left-hand portion of the vehicle. That's the front right-hand portion if you are driving it. So do bear in mind frontal shots can set you on fire, which can be annoying. In terms of mobility, you have a 24-ton tank with a 700 horsepower engine, so your power to weight ratio is a very healthy 29 essentially. Top speed is 64 kilometers an hour going forwards, 23 backwards, and a 58 degree per second traverse speed. So this is a mobile machine. I don't want you to think, just because I said the mobility feels a bit medium tankish, I don't want you to think that the mobility on this tank is bad. It is not. The mobility is decent, it is good, but it's not lightning quick, is the point I'm trying to make. And that's a very healthy traverse speed. Concealment, these are fairly respectable values. The Chinese light tanks do tend to get pretty good concealment ratings. Spotting, this is where it's a little bit of a letdown. 380 meters view range, 782 meter signal range. I mean, who cares about the signal range? That's great. The view range, it means that even if you are using coated optics, you're still going to need a good crew in order to be getting up to that magical 445 meter render range. By a good crew, I mean you're going to be wanting brothers in arms or situational awareness or things like that thrown into the mix. Or you might also be wanting to use a food consumable. That is, of course, another option. So let's have a quick look at the firepower available to this tank. Let's bring up the first two guns initially. So you have this stock 85mm gun from the WZ-131, 10 rounds a minute rate of fire, 159 pen, 200 alpha, 0.38 dispersion, and a 2.3 second aim time. On the WZ-131, it can be a kind of frustrating gun to use. Accurate, it is not. Here on the WZ-132, 0.38 dispersion at 100 meters is, it's okay, and it's decidedly better than the 0.42, you get on this intermediate 100mm gun. In fact, if you compare the two, the 100 wins out on alpha damage and penetration, not a huge surprise. The 85 wins out on rate of fire, accuracy and aim time, and when you combine the alpha damage and the aim time together, it wins out on DPM as well. And it's lighter, so your tank weighs less, so your tank will be slightly faster. Honestly, I think this middle 100mm gun is pretty terrible. I do not recommend anyone using it, so I'm just going to get rid of it for now. If we have a look at the top gun, however, this is kind of your money maker, but it is not perfect. So, 7.69 rate of fire now with 250 alpha damage, which gives these two guns roughly comparable DPM. There is a small discrepancy, but it is not huge, and in fact that DPM discrepancy is slightly in favour of the 100mm gun. Penetration jumps up to basically 190. Do bear in mind your premium penetration goes down from 230 to 225. It's only a small change, but a change is a change. 0.4 dispersion, this is where the gun really loses out. The accuracy is not very good, and this was one of the big changes they made when they decided to keep the tank at tier 8 whilst changing its matchmaker. They really slapped the accuracy of the gun in the face, which was a shame because it had used to have 0.36 dispersion, which had been enough to be effective at mid to long ranges. Not saying you wanted to be a sniper, but you could be effective at those ranges. 0.4 is really quite disappointing. Having said that, your penetration is better, your alpha damage is better, and your DPM is slightly better as well. So I do honestly think this top gun, this 100mm, is the gun that you want to be using. So, use it. In terms of equipment and whatnot, nothing hugely surprising here. I would recommend a vertical stabilizer. You want to be more accurate on the move and having just moved and all of that good stuff. You then also have coated optics. I do strongly recommend. As I said, you're going to be struggling to hit that render range with your optics, but without optics you're never going to make it up there. So if you intend to do any spotting ever, which is something I do recommend in your light and medium tanks in particular, then for this tank you're going to need coated optics. Binos, we're at tier 8 now, this is just a more limiting choice, so I wouldn't recommend binos. Third equipment slot, you could go improved vents. That would increase your view range even more, and would of course slightly increase all your other skills. I used a medium caliber tank gun rammer personally. That's kind of up to you. I would probably recommend the rammer, but if you just want that all-round buff, you might go vents instead. So vertical stabilizer, optics, rammer is my recommendation. You might want to swap out the rammer, I guess, for vents, but I leave that up to you. Consumables, I have the standard ones. Again, because of your terrible view range, you might want to seriously consider using improved combat rations to try and really boost that view range up. Again, obviously that's your choice, and you're going to have to forego one of the other pieces, or one of the other consumables in order to use it. Ammunition, I only carry 5 rounds of APCR and 5 HE on this tank. I didn't find the HE that useful. You can probably get away with less. But by the same token, I never really felt much need to fire a lot of APCR. So, there is that. And hopefully you would be in a comparable situation. But, again, that is, to a certain extent, up to you. So we've kind of talked about the main points of the tank, so let's go and have a quick look at the armor profile. Won't take long, and then I'll show you some gameplay. Okay then, I did say that we would have a look at the armor profile for this tank, so let's do it. Rear, are you joking? It's paper, you can penetrate that with HE. Sides are a very similar story. The only armor you really have is to the front. Frontal hull, you have 50mm on the upper front plate, with a good angle, but not enough to actually make it bounce a great deal of much. The only way you're really going to bounce anything off here is at some very extreme angles where it's an auto bounce. Lower plate, obviously even worse. Front of the turret, that's red, so that must be good, right? Well, not necessarily so much. You have to bear in mind on this scale, red means 55mm of armour. Oh dear. So, the turret is not particularly strong. The cupolas are weak, the whole thing's weak. However, if you have a look at the gun mantlet, there are places where the effective armour jumps up. So the gun mantlet can occasionally catch a shot for you, but you cannot rely on it. And in general, this thing has essentially no armour. From the sides and the rear, you can penetrate it with HE. The frontal armour is just about good enough to shrug off HE rounds. So you do actually need to use armour piercing against this, unlike some of the, say, French and German light tanks. Anyway, that's enough of that. I mean, this is a light tank. The armour was never going to be the focus. Let's go and have a look at some gameplay. Game number 1 then, and this is a tier 8 maximum match, so we're top tier here on the Siegfried line. Now I've picked this because although the Siegfried line is mostly an open map, when you are on an encounter match or an assault, which is what we have here, the fight tends to be focused around the town because that's where your objective is. And so this game is not just going to be a light tank going around a map that's good for light tanks, doing all the spotting, blah 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 blah. It means that even in your more fragile tanks, you tend to have to kind of get a bit stuck in. And in order to try and make it work, I guess. So, here we are. On the Siegfried line, we've spotted out a batch at 12T. Fair enough. And despite the fact that we're top tier, we're just starting off doing the standard, let's see if we can spot any people's thing. And you may notice, by the way, that my particular WZ, I've got optics on it. I've got a pretty decent crew, but I'm still not up to that kind of maximum render range for the game. And actually something I think I forgot to mention in the garage, my particular crew skills, or the crew skills that I would recommend, it's nothing particularly surprising. 6th Sense for your commander, camouflage / repairs for everyone else. You might want safe stowage because the ammo rack, while not a massive problem, I mean it's a Chinese tank, modules are things that tend to break quite a lot. Smooth ride, snapshot, all that good stuff. So, to date, we have lost a T-37, not the end of the world. He is, of course, a bottom tier tank, but, you know, we'd clearly rather have not lost anyone. Spot out a 59-16, of all things, and there's a Cromwell over there, an LTTB, and we're just trying to make ourselves useful. Now, we can't really use that ridge line. 5 degrees of gun depression doesn't allow it, but yay! Spotting damage on the 59-16. And we lose the T-21. Oh dear. Our MT-25 is getting worked over, and at this point, that Cromwell with his 8 degrees of gun depression is able to poke over the ridge line. There's an LTTB who's making a nuisance of himself, an AMX-12T, and essentially that bit of the map has gone rather badly wrong, so we're just going to run away. And you can see so far, we haven't really achieved a huge amount of much. We've got some assistance damage onto a couple of tanks, but only about 550 of it. We haven't exactly been carrying our team, and this is the thing with your light tanks. You have to pick your moments with care. Even when you're top tier, you have to pick your moments with care. So at this point, I've kind of run out of options. I need to be doing something for my team. The scoreline is 2-5, and so I come into the town to see if I can help them out against any of the bad guys. So Tiger P over there, Tiger 1 to my right hand side, Hellcat away in the background, and there's a T-43, tier 7 medium tank, should be able to do something to him. Roll high for damage, that's 308, and come up behind the Tiger P, though not without taking a shot from the enemy Tiger 1 into the bargain, and thankfully there we do actually bounce a T-43 off our rear. That would have been a very lucky angle. Like I said earlier on, you can't really expect to bounce a great deal of much in this tank. But we've finally started doing something. Remember, these replays are not about me with stunning performances, it's just about showing you what the tank is capable of, and there's a whiffed shot. Now, we were trying to shoot through some pillars there, that is true, but still kind of frustrating for that shot to have gone nowhere. Goodbye, Mr. Tiger. And that T-43, no, didn't quite manage to catch him. That's a shame. Never mind. Hellcat, Cromwell are both one-shots. Tiger P, oh, so is the 59-16. Tiger P is round here, threatening our Leo. Hopefully I can get this guy from behind, set him on fire. And you know I was talking about that ammo rack. Ooh, another lucky non-penetrating hit goes into our tracks there. You know, we were talking about that ammo rack. Yeah, it gets taken down. Trying to pick out on the shot on that Tiger P. Aim in, and there we go. Scoreline is 6-8. That one, well, the game says it was a bounce, but it doesn't show up on the amount of damage I've got blocked by my armor, which is a bit of a shame. We leave the T-43 a one-shot, we take a hit in return. Thankfully we hit harder, but you can see with a number of these we're just having to take some damage in order to deal some damage, which is not optimal, but once again, this is not really a situation in which we can use our camouflage to help us. One into the LTTB there, take advantage of his decidedly underwhelming gun depression. Use the Tiger Wreck as cover, I was trying to, so the Cromwell couldn't shoot me, but he's able to put one shot into me anyway, which is a little annoying. Our Leo takes out the Cromwell, and the scoreline is 8-11. Seeing if I can do something about this LTTB. If necessary, I can take one more shot from him without dying. And we put one into him, leave him a one shot. With any luck, our Leo can finish him off, but if not, then we can. Kill number 1. Scoreline is 9-12. Oh, Hellcat has come along to do bad things to our Leo. That is a little bit sad. Who's going to win this engagement? I am. Kill number 2. There's only the 2 of us left now, by the way. Myself and this Leo. There's a Batchat 12T away in the distance who is shooting us, an AMX 12T, a Tiger P just round the corner, a T25/2, and this is looking rather dodgy. Trying to help the Leo against the T25/2 to start off proceedings. 1, because it helps out an ally, and 2, because hopefully it's going to minimise the number of people who have shots on me. So we take off a chunk of his health just to start things off. 12T is coming up behind me. I can't afford to just sit there, which is a little bit of a shame. That shot whiffs, which is really annoying, and here you can see the gun at work, being quite frustrating. Put one into the Batchat 12T, back off, but now I've got lots of people shooting me from multiple different directions, and yeah, there wasn't really much I could do about that. The game ends 10-15. So you saw there the mobility of the WZ is fairly decent. I mean, it is a light tank at the end of the day. The gun, when it hits, great, and bear in mind most of the shots we were taking were at very close range there, but it's not very reliable. It does have a habit of whiffing shots in a kind of annoying manner, and that was with a vertical stabilizer. So, let's go and have a look at the results for this one before we move on to another game. Clearly that game wasn't a win, alas. A little bit unfortunate, but that's how these things go. Didn't have any sort of heroic resistance or anything, but still managed 870 experience. 2,615 damage done, 2 kills, 580 base experience. And if you look at our team, it was just in general worse than the enemy team, unfortunately, and that's the way these things go. 14 shots fired, 11 hits, 11 pens for that damage count. 2,615 damage, of course. All of it was from pretty close range. Received 9 hits, of which 6 penetrated, and luckily 3 did not. Our tracks ate some shots in that match, so can't complain too heavily there. 4 enemy tanks spotted, 7 damage, 2 destroyed, 682 assistance damage, 3.5 kilometers travelled. We had an experienced personal reserve running at the time, hence that 580 became 870. And we still made a small profit, even though it was a tier 8 match with a standard account, and we lost. But we didn't fire any premium ammunition, and there were only 3 shots we fired that didn't do damage, so not too bad. Now, let's go and have a look at a different match, of course. We're going to go and have a look at one where we are not top of the feeding pool. A tier 10 match for you then, of course, and we find ourselves on the highway map. Not necessarily my favourite map in the world, but go figure. You can do some good work in a light tank on this map, given the right scenario and the right setup. So, we're up here in the northern spawn, up at sort of B6, 7, B8, and we are initially going to drive across the river and see if we can spot some bad guys. Having a look at the team compositions, we have fractionally more medium tanks at the enemy team. They have an extra heavy tank though, so I'm hoping we should have a fairly reasonable number of people coming over this way with me, which means we might be able to push this flank, and that would be nice. So immediately someone spots out an enemy HWK, not me, someone else. And I'm just trying to put a shot into this fellow. Remembering, of course, we have 5 degrees of gun depression, which, well, I mean, it's not 3 degrees, but it's not exactly fantastic. Lining up a shot on the side of a T-54, and there we go. And suddenly he is missing a lot of his health and doesn't really want to be here anymore. Can't put in a second shot, which is a little bit unfortunate, but, you know, we will take what we've got so far. Haven't been spotted. Centurion 7/1 over there. If he's hull down, it might be slightly problematic. If not, then it's a big target and we should be able to shoot him. Moving along the river a little bit, if you're going to do this, you do have to be careful about being shot by people from, well, let's say, for example, that M41 Walker Bulldog might want to shoot me, but as it is, he seems to have far larger problems than me. Spotted out the AMX AC-48. Need to be a little careful here. There's the AMX, and nope. Oh, another HWK-12, or is that the same one? No, it must be the same one, there's only one in this game. Hello, Mr. Scorpion. And there we go. We put one shot into him, but we take one from the Bulldog in return. We actually bounce a shot there, get a little bit lucky, and already we're picking up a nice amount of assistance damage. One from the Batchat 12T there. Now, I'd actually loaded high explosive here, hoping for another shot into the Scorpion, but it's not to be. Let's use the bullets to the face as an indicator to be somewhere else. There we go. Didn't roll particularly well for the Scorpion, only 205, but we also managed to pick up some assistance damage on the AMX AC-48, along with, you know, around about, starting to push another sort of 900, 1,000 assistance damage on the Scorpion, and about 450 on the HWK. So we're currently up to 1,620 assistance damage, plus a little bit of damage of our own, and 150 blocked by our armor. Booyah. Fear us. Trying to push this and spot things, of course. And this is where, in a way, almost the light tank feels more comfortable. You're not top tier, you're not expected to push the tempo of the engagement. You can be opportunistic, you can spot, you can do all those things that light tank drivers have done for years before they changed the light tanks. Batchat 25 TAP, don't really want to get shot by him. Don't have shots on him either. T57 Heavy, same applies. And if you actually look at the team setup here, the enemy don't have any super heavy tanks, which means that we should be able to flank people and penetrate them in the side and the rear without resorting to armor-piercing composite rigid ammo. AMX into the side of him, there we go. And I was going to try and pick out another shot, and we're actually rewarded with the kill on that tier 8 French tank destroyer, so hoorah for that. Having a quick look, we know, I was going to say we know the HWK was last spotted round here, but he's actually gone up to the tank maker in the sky. Grilla 15, nah, we don't have a shot there. Scoreline 6-1, so our team overall seem to be putting in a pretty good show and seem to be winning this fairly convincingly. So Grilla and KV4 that we know of. Batchat 25 TAP was last spotted, of course, up on the other side of the river. Now we need to be a little bit careful here. I don't really want to get shot to ribbons by that Batchat. I'm hoping he's going to be preoccupied with all of our friends who are piling into his last known location. This match shouldn't last too much longer at this point, but coming up this ridgeline does give me a good opportunity to spot some peeps and get some more assistance damage. Batchat 25 TAP was up there, decides to drop down, and this could be bad. Ooh, there's more assistance damage. You know, we put one into him, someone else puts shots into him. If he decides to focus me, yeah, that's bad. As it is, well, he dies, and we don't have to worry about that. Scoreline is now 10-1, and we even managed to feast on some assistance damage on Monsieur Batchat. T54, remember him? Yeah, don't we like shooting him? And we actually managed to pick up the kill. Someone else shoots him at the same time, and we managed to get the kill with 172 damage. Centurion now was trying to go for the track there in order to try and ensure we pick up assistance damage on this guy. Set the guy on fire and actually managed to kill him with the fire, which is quite nice. And that just leaves this Stritzwang 103B, and am I going to be able to shoot this guy as well? Yes, I am. Sneak that one in before he dies, and that is the match. So, let's go and have a look at the post-game gats? The post-game stats for this one. That game then was enough for second class mastery, spotter, arsonist, fire for effect, and an Orlix medal, and on top of that we also managed to complete Light Tank Mission 5 with honours this time, picking up one of the shiny, hey look, you did a load of missions with honours awards for the personal missions. 1,931 damage done, 3 kills, 1,117 base experience, and we finished at the top of our team by XP. In fact, this seemed to be a game for light tanks because second on our team was the WZ-132, and on the enemy team their HWK-12 finished at the top. In contrast, our T110E3 finished right down at the bottom, poor fellow. 11 shots fired, 9 hits, 9 pens for that damage count, most of which was from relatively close range, but a bit from longer ranges. 7 hits received, 3 penetrated, 4 did not. Again, there you can see you can get a little bit lucky with that armour, as we got 540 damage blocked with our armour. Now once again, I do not recommend relying on the armour, it should not be relied upon, but you can get some bounces here or there, especially from lower caliber guns, and we had, for example, a bulldog try and shoot us a bit there. 3 enemy vehicles spotted, 6 damaged, 3 destroyed, 3,324 assistance damage, 4 base capture points as we drove into the capture circle right at the end, and just over 2 kilometers travelled. With a premium account, that was 35,000 credit profit, and we had personal reserves running at the time as well, so we ended up with quite a nice amount of experience too. And that ended up being a pretty decent game. So, that's the 2 bits of gameplay I wanted to show you. Let's just finish things off in the garage. Okay then, so my overall thoughts on the WZ-132. Well, way back in the dawny mists of time, this was the first tier 8 light tank I ever got my hands on. So when you have a look at my stats in this machine, please do bear in mind, I played this when I wasn't very good. I'm not saying I'm amazing now, but I'm better than I was. But I really liked this tank. It was one of my favourite tanks in the game, it was a keeper, really enjoyed it. Wind the clock forwards a few years, patch 9.18 turns up, and on paper it looks like it's very kind to the WZ-132. It stays at tier 8 unlike the other tier 8 light tanks that get bumped up a tier, but it has easier matchmaking because light tank matchmaking is gone, and basically the only nerf that Wargaming give it essentially is worse accuracy on the gun. That seems like a good trade. Having said that, I have personally found since the patch the gun drives me mad, and it is just an infuriating experience, and it is just not very fun. And as a result of that, despite the fact that on paper it looks like the tank has effectively been buffed, I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. And so for me, this tank is very much not a keeper anymore. The crew have gone from my WZ-132. In fact, I have moved them to the WZ-131, not because I like the WZ-131, my stats in this are even worse, by the way. I mean, if I got the WZ-132 when I was bad, I got this thing when I was very bad. But I've moved the crew back here because I'm going to do a review of this machine at some point, and I want to get my ace tanker in it, etc. And I do have the WZ-132A sitting in my garage. This is, of course, the tier 9. I have this, and I will at some point get around to playing it. But no, I'm not keeping the WZ-132 anymore. Would have done a long time ago, but no longer. Your mileage may vary, and that of course is entirely up to you, and that's absolutely fine. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this review, maybe found it informative. If you did, by all means feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel, and as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.